When a feature comes in, I've got to deal with my cat now. Hi, I'm Camille. Today I'm going to talk about being a post-production coordinator, which I will probably just call a post coordinator. So a post coordinator is basically an assistant to a post supervisor on a feature film or a television show. As such, the duties of a post coordinator can change depending on which post supervisor they work for and what that post supervisor needs them to do. I'm going to go over some of the various things that I did as a post coordinator, but this might not be representative of all post coordinator jobs, so just be aware you might be asked to do some different things than I'm breaking down here in this video. First, let me just explain broadly that there are three phases of production. There's pre-production, which is before a movie starts to shoot. Then there's production, which is the actual time when the TV show or movie is being recorded. And then there's post-production, which is what happens to the materials once the TV show or movie has been recorded. So post-production actually can start during pre-production, making sure that they're ready to really hit the ground running once materials from production start to roll in. So I'm mostly going to talk about the workflow on feature films. I imagine it's similar for television productions, but I only worked in features, independent features. So as soon as we were hired to work on a feature, we would make a schedule for the post-production process. So the post coordinator, my job was to actually sit at the computer and create this schedule. We used Movie Magic scheduler software, but I imagine that Outlook works great. There might be some other scheduling calendar programs that might be used now, but just so that you have access to a calendar and can add events to it that either last all day or weeks or for smaller durations. So for example, if a movie starts shooting on October 1st, we would need to schedule the editing room to start that afternoon or evening so that the assistant editor could come in and start loading in dailies. The film, on independent films, a 14-day shoot is fairly standard, so we would put 14 days of shooting and loading in dailies, and then we would give the editor another length of time to get the editor's cut finished, maybe 4 weeks. Then the producer's notes would come in, we'd need time for that. Then the final cut would be a couple weeks later from that. And then how long it takes for mixing or dubbing, ADR, anything else that needs to be handled during post-production, talking to the composer, working on all that stuff. So that all goes down on the calendar. Sometimes when you're working on these dates, you need to backdate them from events that you have as targets. So a target date might be the Cannes Film Festival. It might be the end of the year to have a screening eligible for Academy consideration. It might be the Toronto Independent Film Festival, whatever, Sundance, something like that. So you would be working with that as your target, that we need to be finished by here with something that we can screen at that event, and we need to build in time for the application process to those events, because you aren't automatically just allowed to go to those things. You have to send cuts and they have to be approved. So all those things need to be thought about while you're creating the schedule for the post-production. And while the post supervisor will be throwing out, oh, we're going to give them this long for that and this long for this, part of the post coordinator's job then is to also be looking at the calendar and noting which days are weekends or holidays where it's great that you want the editor to be finished on the 4th of July, but beware that July 3rd is a federal holiday, July 4th is a Saturday, so that's not going to happen. So either you're going to shorten the time he has by a couple of days, or you're going to give him until early into the next week. So the post coordinator needs to keep reintroducing reality into the situation while the post supervisor is throwing out their ideal dates for the schedule. This is also why, if you've watched my videos about dialogue and spotting and things in script services, the dates that they get materials are horrible dates, like the 4th of July, because the post supervisor and post coordinator are only focused on things like their editor and their director. So they're not thinking, oh, but we want to have materials sent for translation, so why are we delivering this 3 o'clock before a Friday holiday? You know, they don't consider that. They consider the editor, the director, the producers as their primary clients to appease during this process. The post team is also responsible for setting up vendors for part of the post-production process. Some of these things the post supervisor handles directly, like negotiating rates on mixing studios and the rates for ADR, the rates for the composer, that kind of thing. The post supervisor probably will handle some of they'll have a budget from the producer, and then their job is to negotiate better prices for those things. So the post supervisor probably has a group of people in their pocket that they use regularly, and a lot of times if they work on a lot of projects, they'll have some, like, oh, this is my great composer who should be making a ton of money, but what if you do this independent film for not a ton of money, and then the next time I get a big film, I'm really going to push you as the composer that we need to hire to make the decent wage on this big film. So the post supervisor has relationships with people all over town who do various parts of the post-production workflow process. Some of those contract things the post coordinator won't make the decisions on, but they will be asked, you know, find out what the different rates we can get for daily processing from the 3 different film labs that are available, and if they can fit us in on this schedule, or if they are not available on that schedule, what schedule they are available for, how close we can keep to our budget and our schedule. So just find out all these bids from these different companies, main and end title creation, maybe getting sample reels from composers, talking to sound effects companies, because a lot of the sound effects that you hear in a movie might just be like stock sound effects, so you get sent a catalog of CDs with all these different sound effects on it, and then you negotiate a rate with the company that provided those. So the post coordinator will do a lot of this work of gathering materials, gathering bids from different companies, so that the post supervisor really just has to come in and look at the different offers and decide who they want to go negotiate with to try and get a better deal for that stuff. Once the post supervisor has negotiated the deals, the post coordinator could be asked to handle a lot of the paperwork to make sure that this is all covered with a paper trail. So they'll be asked to write the deal memos and send purchase orders and get everything in writing and narrowed down. So they'll need to pay attention. Okay, the post supervisor says this is the rate that you agreed to. Please confirm that you do agree to this rate and that we're going to start on this date. And so you deal with a lot of that back and forth, making sure that everything is lined up how the post supervisor wants it to be lined up. Once the editing has started, the post coordinator interacts with the assistant editors and editor, making sure that they're on schedule, or if there are any problems that need to be addressed, that they can be taken care of quickly. They'll also facilitate the assistant editor in making sure that they know who needs to get copies of the different edits. Once the film is locked, the post coordinator might be asked to go to different sessions near the completion of the film, like a color correcting session where you sit and you watch a version of the movie and it might be silent and you're sitting with a color specialist and you just make sure that everything looks good. The color specialist should do a good job of this. You know, just like retouching photos, sometimes you have to retouch the film so that if the lighting changed, you want the skin tones to look consistent from shot to shot. So a color correction specialist will do that, and the post coordinator basically just sits there and goes, yeah, that looks good, so that the post supervisor doesn't have to sit there and go, yeah, that looks good. But going to those sessions is fun, and usually they will cater a lunch for you. So you know, it's, even though it's a little bit boring because you probably have seen this movie 12 times already and 6 of those times you've seen it silently, it's nice to be the client for a change, and that's something that the post coordinator gets to do. They're not always acting as the vendor. So if you have a choice between being a client and a vendor, even though the client is spending the money, they get treated a lot better than the vendor gets treated. So I always recommend be the client and not the vendor. Sometimes you will also you'll go to like a screening of the silent assembly from the original negative if it's finishing on film, and there you're watching to make sure that it looks like there were no mistakes made in the edit. So there might be flash frames, or a shot might have been flipped or something. So you're watching for that kind of thing. Usually you're not finding anything. It's just a lot of the quality control process requires a person to actually sit there in real time watching something. So the post coordinator gets to do a lot of that, just sitting there in real time watching something and making sure that everything looks correct. Like the title says, there's a lot of coordinating involved in post coordinating. You spend your day making phone calls and sending emails, checking on the progress of various people who are working on a film, and updating the post supervisor to let them know if everything is on schedule or if there's a problem bubbling up somewhere. I was also a post coordinator on trailers, so a lot of the same things were done on a much smaller scale. I would book narrators, deal with agents, prepare narration scripts, attend narration sessions, make sure that everyone had the materials they needed when they walked into the room so that there was no delay in getting right to work. So I will tell you a little story now. I was working on a movie doing post, and as part of our post we were also doing a trailer, so we were doing the post coordinating and the trailer creation at our post-production company for this movie. And there was some event coming up. They need trailers for a bunch of the big film markets like AFM or MIPCon, I guess. I don't know. It's been a while. These might not be the right abbreviations for these things. So the director wanted a narrator who sounded a specific way. He said, I want it to sound like this actor. So I called the agents. I said, I need a narrator who can mimic this actor. We need this actor. And I was assured that there was a narrator who we worked with quite a lot on trailers who did a lot of cartoon voices kind of things. So I was assured this guy, he could do any voice we wanted. He was our man. So I booked him and he came in and we said, can you do this actor's voice? And he said no. And so then we're stuck in this session with this voice actor who feels terrible that his agent has promised he could do something he couldn't do. So I think we eventually compromised, and the director was like, can you do this actor? No. Can you do this one? Can you do this one? And finally they were like, can you do Gary Owens from Laugh-In? You know, Laugh-In, how he pretends he's holding something there. And he was like, yeah, I can do Gary Owens. So he finally did Gary Owens. The director was not thrilled. I got in trouble. The agent got in trouble. The actor, I think, said, don't pay me as much as you were going to pay me because I feel terrible about this. So that was a bad situation all around for everyone. So I guess the moral of that story is that agents will lie to you. So if there's something you really, really need, maybe do more than just take an agent's word for it. Say, can you send us a sample before we book? But that's, you know, something a post coordinator might be asked to do, book some talent to do different dialogue sessions. I got this job by getting hired at a small post-production company. I started there as an intern for about a month, and while I was there I learned just all sorts of different things. I learned whatever they needed me to do. So I didn't even really know what the job titles were for what I was doing. I was just more of a, here, do this, okay, I'll do that. So I did a lot of assistant editing and trailer editing and post coordination. But okay, so if you want to be a post coordinator, I would say the best thing to do is to see if you can find a post supervisor and query them if they are hiring or looking for a post coordinator, and then just hope that they like you. You could try and get a job at a post-production company like I did, or you can just, you know, sort of send out random query letters to post supervisors and say, hey, I really want to learn the post business, and I'm a fast learner and I love to send emails and make phone calls. If you can find a post supervisor who you get along with, then they will do the hard part of finding the work, and they will just bring you along with them as their post coordinator. So that's a great way to not have to work too hard to find individual jobs and to be working fairly steady work. Because a post supervisor probably will be working on several projects at once. It's unlikely, unless they're working on something that's just huge, they'll probably have 2 or 3 projects going at once, and that way they can also leverage the budgets from different projects off of their different vendors to get better deals. If you are interested in being a post supervisor or a producer, this is a good place to start on that ladder of progress. Or if you like to work on films, want to work on films or TV shows, and you don't want to really move into one of those higher pressure positions, then you can just stay a post coordinator. It's a good job. Obviously, I did not want, after I did this for a while, and I saw what post supervisors did and how stressful it was, and that it's not really suited to my personality. I'm not really a negotiator, deal maker kind of person. I decided I did not want to try and become a post supervisor, but it might be the right thing for you. This is good for someone who isn't shy about talking to strangers and negotiating deals. Someone the opposite of me. You need to be outgoing and energetic. You need to be not intimidated if someone is like, hey, can you call this insert name of famous director and ask them for their address? Can you call this actor and find out if they will go to lunch with me on Friday at 2 o'clock? So you need to not be intimidated if you get asked to make some of those important calls. And you need to not be the kind of person who then wants to jump in there while you've got insert name of big director on the phone and say, hey, can I pitch you my idea? You need to stay in your place and not be annoying, or you could get everyone fired. if you can get really passionate about the project that you're working on, even when you don't have a big creative investment in it, then this might be good for you. I had a lot of trouble getting on board working on projects where I didn't love the script. I'm not going to say which projects I didn't love the script on, but it just made me want to sit down and write my own stuff that I felt like I could get the right level of passion about. But if you're not a writer, if you're not into being super creative and you just want to champion the work of others, then this could be a good outlet for that. So shortly after I got the job at the post-production company, I was informed I had to come in and work on the weekend on something. This was my first job, and I thought they were kidding. I thought, nobody has to work on the weekend unless you're, when I worked at the craft store, I had to work on the weekend, but my schedule changed every week. But working a 40-hour-a-week job, why would I have to work on the weekend? And then I found out they were not kidding, and since I was salaried, I would not get paid, but they would be providing pizza. So that was a downside for me, having to work on weekends, work long days. The long hours for no overtime pay was really my biggest downside. It just got really disheartening for me to work on projects I wasn't passionate about, to work long hours on them and not really be appreciated for the work that I was doing, because money would have been the best way to show the appreciation for the work I was doing. And my boss had a terrible habit of, I had to work every day from 9 to 6. That was my regular schedule. And then at 4 o'clock, I would say, what else do you need me to do? There's nothing, I don't know what to do. I have nothing to do. Oh, nothing. 5 minutes to 6. Oh, here's 12 things I should have had you do 2 hours ago, but please do them now and don't go home until 8. I really hated that. So, and if you know LA traffic, you know what time you leave your job can make a huge difference in how fast you can get home. So basically, at this point, I was working in Hollywood for a while and West Hollywood for a while, and I lived in Glendale. This is not going to make sense to a lot of people, but if I left at 5:59, I could be home in half an hour. If I left at 6:01, I could be home in an hour and a half. So this was really annoying, where I would be like, I can leave right at 6, 1 minute before 6. I can be home in a decent amount of time. Nope. Now I might as well stay until 8 because I won't be able to get home until 8 or close to it. So that was very annoying and very it's grinding down of morale as it went on, and that continued year after year to be the way that it went. So this was not a good fit for me. But if you like to work hard, if you are organized and like dealing with people all day, this could be a good fit for you. Unfortunately, I was paid on salary, so I did not get paid for overtime, and there was a lot of overtime. When I started working there, I was earning $300 a week. This was in 1997, so adjusted for inflation, that is now $500 a week. Minimum wage was $5 an hour at the time, so that was a little bit better than minimum wage at $7.50 an hour, but I feel like I was taken advantage of. As soon as a man started in the same position, he was paid $50 more a week than I was, even though the inflation over time had not made it sufficient that he would earn $50 more a week than I was. It was because he was a man. and that was very obvious. So someone else came in and did the same just did post coordinating and not the editing stuff, but she had a lot more experience than I did, and she insisted that she get $750 a week, which would be around $1,250 a week. So she was given that rate, so clearly the company could afford it, they just didn't value me. I worked almost entirely in independent films. Independent films have much lower budgets than feature films for big studios, so that's also part of the reason probably why my pay was not very good. I mean, it was okay, and it was, had I wanted to pursue producing or post supervising, it was a very good starting point for that. And at the time, I could afford on $300 a week to live in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself in Glendale, no problem. So inflation has done some terrible things to Los Angeles. That's a whole different story. But a regular full-time post coordinator job should be okay money. And if you can work on bigger projects, then it might be pretty good money. Like so many things, it comes down to who you work for. I always discourage people from taking salaried jobs if you can avoid it. It has never once worked out for me as the better option to an hourly position or a project-by-project position. If you have any questions about what else I did as a post coordinator or any of the projects I might have worked on, please feel free to ask them below. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see all of my videos about all sorts of different things.